Then over time, the water didn't go back into the canyon.
Oh yeah, this is the tunnels.
Well, so we're getting there. There's a little way to get there.
Yeah.
So it seeped. It's easy to get to the tunnels. And so the urban legend of Twin Falls is that those tunnels were...
They used to come down the canyon to go into this like place where they did the mining. I saw the stairs. I gotta show you this video.
Well, there were an old set of stairs that would take you down at the base of Hoshone Falls, but below Hanson Bridge.
Oh no, yeah, but right by Hanson Bridge, just distance.
10,000 people, the seventh largest city in Idaho in the history, disappears. Now, ways to sort of drain the system, no matter what they did.
It didn't work, huh?
Right, and so then in the 1920s and 30s, they came up with these ideas of the canals, of the tunnels.
It's gonna put these headphones on too. So then, put them on, and then you can hear me perfect. Can you hear me perfect?
I can.
Okay, and then bring that really close to your mouth, like as close as possible. Like you're like speaking really directly into the mic.
Okay.
And then, and you can even position yourself closer. These are new chairs that I got, so like I don't know how all of this is gonna work out. But yeah, bring it as close as you can.
It's comfortable. Now you're real loud for me. I can hear you really loud.
Oh, okay. I'll back off a little bit
Well,
there.
that's okay. I don't want to be the right sound there. You're the sound guy.
Yeah. See, it's kind of like that ASMR. You gotta make some. I don't know if you've ever seen these YouTube videos.
No, I used to do radio interviews back in the old days.
Oh, really?
So similar setup to this, although I'm worried the headphones will mess up my hair.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, this is this is primarily to go ahead and make sure that we have a really good audio on this, and you can also pick up a lot of other stuff as well. So I think we're golden on this. Audio test is good, and we're just about to start here. All right, here we go. This is a clap, so that way it syncs everything up. Cool. All right. Welcome to another podcast. I have Russ Tremayne. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And he is a local historian of Twin Falls, and you've got so many titles. Like mad scientist or something. I don't know. Is that one of them?
Well, 40 years history professor, and so that's sort of my my bad.
So you have 40 years of history?
Yes, I was 20 years at Boise State before I moved here to CSI, and just retired after 20 years. So my title now is emeritus.
Okay.
That's something they give you when they get rid of you.
Okay.
and so I still have an office and still a little bit active at CSI, but very busy in history. I was teaching for 40 years, and at the end of my career, more and more I was inclined to do history as opposed to teaching, whereas in the early part of my career, I only wanted to be a teaching historian, and I did that with great passion for many years and had a tremendous run here at CSI. Now, I have other titles. I was with the Idaho Humanities Council as a board member, a tremendous experience. We founded here in Twin Falls an organization called Preservation Twin Falls.
Is that the committee that Samra's part of?
Now, Samra is part of the Twin Falls City Preservation Commission.
Oh, okay.
And I was a member of the Preservation Commission back in my early days here in Twin Falls.
Gotcha.
And what came out of that was a project we might talk about, the grain elevators downtown. And the city and urban renewal owned the grain elevators, and they decided the best thing to do was to tear those down. And we felt passionately that Twin Falls Preservation Commission, which I served on, that those should be preserved. And in the end, we took control of those. Now, when I say we, that's a nonprofit that the Honorable Paul Smith and I founded some years ago, and that began as a way to preserve the grain elevators. That is, to restore them We put murals there. We cleaned it up. It was a local eyesore. The inside was a mess. Homeless people lived there. High school kids partied there.
Okay, this is interesting.
Right, and then we built a little park there that I'm very
So
proud
you're
of.
talking about the silos right next to that.
So we had a debate about the language, and some people in the community call those silos. The farm community calls those grain elevators.
Oh, okay.
Now, that was part of the largest flour mill, one of the largest flour mills in the western United States in 1916. And then the flour mill has been torn down, dismantled in the 1990s, and what's left are the grain elevators. The brick house there is a warehouse that was part of the enormous flour mill, and we have pictures. We have pictures, and so our purpose is to tell the story of the warehouse district. So, but not to get a feel there.
I feel like we're getting all over the place. Let me kind of try to.
One of my titles, as we were talking about,
Yeah.
is a member of Preservation Twin Falls, and we're doing all kinds of local work. And just, Arnell, one more thing. I'm often referred to as a local Twin Falls historian.
Yeah, that's what I called you. I was like, Russ, the local Twin Falls historian.
Which, of course, is far from the truth. I have a Ph.D. in Latin American history. I was the director of Canadian Studies at Boise State for a long time. International relations, American history is my area. Now, here in Twin Falls, historians were supposed to teach our classes. We're supposed to do things there at the campus with committees and whatnot, and we're supposed to do things with the community. And so I've been engaged in public history, Twin Falls public history, since I've been here, but I'm not really a local historian or a public historian. Now, I am a historian from Idaho, from the Magic Valley.
And you know a lot.
So that's sort of confusing. My expertise is not local Twin Falls history, but I'm an amateur.
Amateur. All right. Well, we're talking to an amateur historian today who knows a lot and has got a lot of titles. So this is what I wanted to kind of do. It was I wanted you to walk me through like the beginning of everything, not the whole universe, but like the beginning. And again, so what we're just to make sure everybody's kind of knows what we're talking about. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about like the general history of Twin Falls, and then kind of get anything that you kind of feel that's interesting and you want to kind of go off of a tangent and talk about and so forth. So I think that'll be kind of great.
Let me give you the thumbnail sketch. I brought a couple of books, and this is the Bible for local history, my dear.
This one right here,
mentor Dr. Gentry's book. In the Middle and
yeah,
on the Edge.
I saw him. We were at dinner or something like that, or at that what's that place called? Right across the bridge.
What Elevation there?
No, not Elevation. The one past. There was like a history thing that was happening.
Yeah. Well, if there's
you guys had like a little. Samara brought me to like a little history session where you guys did like
out at the barn there.
Out at the barn.
Oh,
there
sure,
it is.
Sure.
Yes. So
well, I want to give a plug to the barn because we have another lecture series. But Dr. Gentry,
right here,
is the authority on this, and I use his book as a reference source. But I've taught Idaho history for Idaho State University.
Yeah.
And so look, in a nutshell, I look at Idaho history, and we should look at it prehistory before the Europeans came along and Native Americans. That's a story in and of itself, and the Native Americans in this area.
Yeah.
But then we sort of start, like lots of historians, with the Europeans coming through. And I call this for Twin Falls prehistory. That's before the Twin Falls Canal Company in 1905.
Okay.
And in that period, this was a very difficult area because of the canyon.
Yeah.
So you know about the hunt party after Lewis and Clark, explorers, people exploring here discovered the canyon and the difficulty, the Astorians and Milner Dam, that very interesting story. And so subsequently, of course, we're on the Oregon Trail. That develops, and that's, in Twin Falls history, that is sort of the central story. We end up being on the Oregon Trail, the Strycker Ranch, just outside of town.
I know. I love going over there because it's like this is part of the Oregon Trail, or that's the stage stop that they basically stopped at because they used to come from Salt Lake City and they were going to Fort Boise or something like that.
Well, so the community there before Twin Falls, Rock Creek Crossing, and it's a crossing of the Kelton Road, which came over the mountains from Oakley and Salt Lake, then connected with the Oregon Trail, and then the Oregon Trail, which originally would go along the Snake River Canyon to Milner, and maybe down Pole Line Road. A famous historian in Jerome wrote extensively about the north side route, the Oregon Trail. There was a part of the Oregon Trail on the other side of the canyon, the famous Goodell cutoff over through the sort of the north side of the canyon there.
Yeah.
So there's various Oregon trails, but the main route became cutting across from Milner to Rock Creek to Strycker Ranch, because you couldn't get water from Milner until you get down past Wendell because of the canyon. So this is one of the most difficult stretches of the Oregon Trail because of Native Americans, because of the geography and the difficulty of getting water. So what they did was to cut across Rock Creek and then come down right through Twin Falls, through Rock Creek Canyon, to a place called Desert Station, where Rock Creek Park is now. And there they could get water.
Which Rock Creek Park is? There's like two different Rock Creek parks. Like the one where everybody kind of goes at primarily.
Well, the main Rock Creek Park down by the old hospital.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The main park there, up on the canyon edge there, is a stage station.
Oh.
Rock Creek Station there.
Okay.
Now there was a stage stop in the City of Rocks, Strycker stage stop, and then this stage stop, Desert Station, and their Oregon Trail folks would congregate. Later it became a stage stop that ran from Boise to Salt Lake. So Rock Creek was a Rock Creek Crossing, and there's two major trails that cross there, and that was a very interesting community out there. Oregon Trail history, and we don't want to talk about that too much, other than in Idaho history, we got Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
They were lost up north. They discovered the South Path, and the South Path then, because of a map created by Robert Stewart, showed the way. Rock Creek was the way, and that became the main path, because they could get water at Strycker, they could get water at Desert Station, and then they go on down to Glenn's Ferry, where they did the crossing there.
I've been at that crossing as well. Yeah.
And there they have a big museum, Oregon Trail Museum. What Strycker has is one of the only places on the Oregon Trail that has a building that exists from that period. So that's the oldest building in southern Idaho, right here in Twin Falls.
I know. That's so cool. We've got the Strycker. Not that many people go over there. I wish more people go over there to go ahead and kind of.
So this is our plug.
This is our plug. Go to Strycker Ranch and see.
And the State Historical Society just made a major investment.
Restoration.
Improving the site, and so it's well worth it. Now, again, this was what I call pre-Twin Falls history, sort of Oregon Trail history, and then the territorial period is interesting, the late 19th century with the sheep herders, with the cattle ranchers, and then, of course, the famous confrontation between the two in the Diamond Field Jack trial.
Diamond Field
now,
Jack.
That ultimately was a confrontation between the cattle ranchers here in the territorial period and the sheep herders that moved in and were in a struggle for control of the rangelands. And the story goes, Arnell, you've not heard of the Diamond Field Jack trial, one of the two most important trials in Idaho history.
I have not.
The trial was held in Albion, which was the county seat, and the Tremayne families from Albion, but a legendary story about the cattle ranchers. And the cattle empire stretched from Reno to out here at Rock Creek. And when you go to Rock Creek next time, Rock Creek Station, Rock Creek Crossing, Strycker Ranch, you want to go see a home out there, the Bros Ranch, which is a spectacular mansion built by one of these great big cattle ranchers. So the cattle ranchers are here, the sheep herders move in, they have a confrontation, they hire Jack Davis, Diamond Field Jack, and then out towards Jackpot area, there's a famous confrontation where he kills a couple of these sheep herders. He's put on trial. The Diamondfield Jack trial involved two of the most famous lawyers in American history, certainly in Idaho history, and I won't belabor that because all of your people know about the Diamondfield Jack trial. But that's the
prehistory of Twin Falls.
Of course, Mr.
I.B.
Perrine moves
yeah.
in. The railroad,
He moves in to where Blue Lakes Country Club is down there.
And the railroad comes to Shoshone in 1880s.
Oh, yeah, because the railroad comes to Shoshone, and this is how people then get to Shoshone Falls, right?
Well, and so they have the hotel there. It's a tourist site.
Yeah. So explain that a little bit. So Shoshone gets the railroad, right?
Shoshone is the railhead. And so most of early Twin Falls history is related to getting products from Shoshone. And then, of course, tourists coming to see Niagara of the West. And interestingly enough, before the Canal Company,
would there be a lot of people coming to see this, like back in the day, like or would it just be this kind of like a one-off kind of deal? You come to see Shoshone Falls because we have it as a tourist attraction. Like thousands of people come and see it.
That's another story there, Arnell, about the development of the West and the national parks, and Yellowstone was developed in Yosemite, and my colleague at University of Washington published a book about the relationship between national parks and the railroads promoted national parks in order to get business to take people out to see the West.
Come on, that makes sense.
But look, so this was an interesting site, and so the numbers of people, you're not thinking in terms of modern day tourism, but it was an attraction, and the Grand Canyon of the North. So it's unique geography, to be sure, but the point is for Twin Falls to develop, to get merchandise, to get product from Shoshone, and then Mr. Perrine taking it down the canyon on the Blue Lakes grade.
Yeah.
Ultimately built a bridge. There was a ferry there, and then
that's how people got used to get across before the bridge.
Right.
They would have to go down the Blue Lakes Country Club road, and then they cross with a ferry across
until the bridge was built, and then up the other side where you would come out of Canyon Springs, and so that's a remarkable story there. And you can imagine when 1905 August, when the railroad arrived at the grain elevators.
Oh, okay.
And then that was a revolution in Twin Falls, and that came concomitant with the canal system. And so the canal was finished in 1905. The railroad came to town. So I look at Twin Falls history before the Canal Company.
Before the Canal Company and then after the Canal Company itself.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that's important before the Canal Company? Because when did Twin Falls officially become like Twin Falls? When did somebody say like this chunk of land is Twin Falls?
Right. So that is the canal operation. So let's back up there a little bit. In the late 19th century, reclamation. And the government decides we can irrigate the West. We can reclaim land, irrigation, and it will bloom.
Yeah.
And that's a big story about how that developed. Some of the first irrigators, the LDS in Utah, people lovingly refer to them sometimes as the Lord's beavers. So they developed irrigation. There's a history of we can develop the West, we have to develop irrigation projects.
Okay.
So the CARE Act, legislation to develop irrigation projects. The Twin Falls Canal Company, the Twin Falls Project is the largest, most successful irrigation project in U.S. history.
Wow, we have the best here, a Canal Company.
Now keep in mind that's the Canal Company story. And there were a plethora of canal companies in Boise, the Mini-Cassia area, in other parts of the state. The development of irrigation projects, a partnership between government, between farmers, and municipal corporations.
Yeah.
The Twin Falls Canal Company, the Twin Falls Land and Water Company, the mother of the Twin Falls Canal Company, developed the dam,
Yeah, so just make sure people understand what dam you're talking about. You're talking about the Milner Dam.
Milner Dam,
The
which
Milner Dam is where the water diverges to the canals, and basically there's I believe 3 leads that it goes off of, or
Sure.
4, something like that.
Well, and so thinking of local history, you can go to Strycker, and then after you go to Strycker, go out to Milner, and
Go
they
to
have
Milner
a very
Dam.
impressive little historical display that the Canal Company put up out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a remarkable history, building the dam, a diversion dam, and then putting the water out over the system. Just interesting little side stories. When the canal water came to the Twin Falls side, then over time the water didn't go back into the canyon.
Oh yeah, this is the tunnel.
Well, so we're getting there. There's a little way to get there.
Yeah.
So it seeped. It's easy to get to the tunnels, and so the urban legend of Twin Falls is that those tunnels were built, or Chinese tunnels where Chinese people lived. Because we skipped an important part of territorial history where in the canyon in the 1870s, Chinese lived in the canyon and had a very active sort of mining communities there, and that's an important part of territorial history because then in 1882, the Chinese were excluded, and in every mining community, and southern Idaho is a story of mining, you had Chinese. And so this sort of race relations in early Idaho history, and we could throw in the Basques, and we could throw in Hispanics, and so there's an interesting dynamic there, not to mention Native Americans. But Twin Falls Canal Company, when they put the water to the Jerome side, the north side, now the geography there is different. And they were ready, they had a band, they had celebrities, they're going to celebrate the water coming through. Just like in Twin Falls, they had and you've seen the pictures of the dignitaries standing at the dam as they open the dam. And every March, Arnell, they still have that sort of ceremonial opening.
I need to go there and participate in that.
I thought you had done that once.
I didn't. I've never done that. I want to go do that. I want to be there. I want to get a historic photo. I want to stand in the same spot that these people stood, and I'm here. You
can do that. But when the water got to Jerome, it never got to Jerome.
It never got to Jerome. What do you mean it didn't get to Jerome? There's
the geography there, the water just disappeared into the lava rock over there.
Oh.
So over here, the water seeped to the surface. Over there, it sort of disappeared. Now, ultimately, the water filled the canal, and it was all good.
Yeah.
It just didn't get there in time for the celebration. But there were problems galore with the early canal system.
Yeah,
but
logistics
they built it. They started the water in 1905. In 1909, they turned over the management of the system to the Twin Falls Canal Company.
Okay.
The Twin Falls Land and Water Company had the right to sell land and the water rights.
Okay.
And then Twin Falls was laid out as a Twin Falls Canal Company, and people could come there to the office, where the city hall is now, and they could file for land and a land drawing, if you will. Now, they did the same thing a few years later out at the Salmon Dam. And in Salmon Dam, in 1909, the tallest dam in the world at the time, and go look at that dam.
I've been to that dam. I've actually been inside of that dam. I don't know if you've ever been inside of it. It's crazy.
There they were going to have 100,000 acres irrigated, but the water never filled the dam. There was never enough water there. And 2 years after the Salmon Tract, as opposed to the Twin Falls Tract, was started, they went bankrupt, and they never really were ever to bring more than 30,000 acres under irrigation. It was sort of an unsuccessful irrigation project. So the Twin Falls Canal Company, but there were canal companies' irrigation projects throughout southern Idaho. Turns out Twin Falls, as Mr. Alberti liked to tell me when I did the Twin Falls Canal Company book, the Twin Falls Canal Company is the big gorilla on the block. Now, we get our water as a result of what happens upriver, and ultimately that became the dilemma because the people down below us are at our mercy, and we're at the mercy of eastern Idaho. So eventually they got to work out a deal with the various parts of the river and a total irrigation project, not to mention that our water comes through Wyoming, and then the Snake River system originates in the Columbia system, which has its origins in Canada.
Oh.
So this is where
I thought the water came from a Yellowstone or something like that.
well, so we get our water from Wyoming, where we built storage systems up in Wyoming.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the American Falls system, and so a series of storage dams.
Okay, and just kind of store it, level
we'll
it down.
have to get out a map and see.
Yeah,
how
follow it back. I tried doing that once.
See how the Columbia system is sort of connects there.
It's so crazy how this waterways like just goes everywhere. You start following a path, and it's like, why did I end up here? You know, it's crazy.
Well, so Arnell, then for me, and I'll just sort of finish this survey here. Then for me, then it's what happens in Twin Falls subsequent to the canal and the railroad. And you have this golden age of Twin Falls. And what Dr. Gentry talks about in his book. I mean, think of this, Arnell. We have the canal system.
Yep, we got the canal, we got the
all of a
land.
sudden, we've got irrigation products to export. And then we have the last great gold rush in the lower 48, and that's at Jahabitch in northern Nevada. That's about halfway between here and Elko. Maybe you've been to Jahabitch before?
Yeah, I've actually heard about this city. It's kind of like in a
in a canyon.
In a canyon,
So
and
in
it's
1909.
yeah, I've been trying to get there.
A huge gold rush, and Nevada produced more gold and silver in the first 2 decades of the 20th century than any other state in the Union. This gold rush. Now, Jahabitch had no road really from Three Creek 60 miles into Jahabitch. Where you would launch is from the Salmon Dam.
Oh, you with a boat?
No. From Rogerson, you had to take a road to Three Creek, and then they had to take a mule train in. Now, eventually, they built the road, which is very precarious to the present day. So it's a hard place to get to. But with the gold rush, how do you get supplies? And the dilemma was, to get it from Elko to Jahabitch is more difficult than from Twin Falls to Jahabitch. So Twin Falls became the major supply point for the gold rush in Jahabitch. And then, remembering your history, in 1914, we have the First World War. And so this is a bonanza for Twin Falls agriculture, the golden age, the First World War I boom. And when we do the tours of the old homes of Twin Falls, most of those old homes were built in this first 2 decades of prosperity and the good times. Now, in 1920, the war ends, agriculture goes into a depression. In the 1920s and the 1930s, we think of the depression as a 1930s thing. In rural America, in Idaho, agricultural America, the depression started in the 1920s and lasted until the Second World War boom. And so Twin Falls had these aspirations of greatness and growth. And then it sort of stagnated. And all the way until I was really a youngster and a high school student. And Dr. Gentry tells the story about Twin Falls wanting to grow, wanting to get a certain population, and it didn't happen. It couldn't happen. And interestingly, the community college kind of grows out of that period of growth that never really materializes. And then, of course, we sit here today, and Twin Falls has now realized that growth that it always aspired to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way to finishing my survey, Arnell. And
well, I got more questions here for you. Well, talk about a little bit. Let's talk about. So you mentioned, the water, is being irrigated, right? And it goes to, Jerome. It's going to Twin and so forth. Tell them about the problem that they encountered, I guess. Basically, the water is not going down because of the lava rock, right?
So just on the Twin Falls side.
Yeah.
Now, the idea is that you put the water out and it's going to ultimately find its way back into the canyon. Now, when they irrigated, they had these places over by Buell, various locations along the canal that's going to run from Milner to Castleford is the dream. Where the water rises to the surface, they called it seepage. That is, the water table, when they put the canal water out, would rise to the surface, and then that would kill the crops, and that caused a problem. The Canal Company tried to do all kinds of things to address that. They started building little tile pathways to sort of drain the system, no
Okay.
matter what they did.
It didn't work, huh?
Right, and so then in the 1920s and 30s, they came up with these ideas of the canals, of the tunnels. And when I did my research on the Twin Falls Canal Company, I found this most remarkable because in the 20s and 30s, as I just mentioned, you have the Twin Falls Canal Company in a sort of a crisis because there was never as much water as they anticipated. You got the agricultural recession, if you will, and then the seepage problem.
Yeah, yeah.
So during the 30s, the WPA, Work Progress Administration, entered a deal with the Canal Company to pay Canal Company workers 28 cents an hour rather than 22 cents an hour.
28 cents an hour?
Instead of 22. And then the Canal Company provided the equipment, and they went out, and this was like a mining operation, Arnell. In fact, if you look at those tunnels,
Yeah.
they're built to specific dimensions, and they had railroad tracks running down them, and they would go in and blow dynamite and remove what they call riprap, and then use those rocks to line the canals. You see those rocks. There were folks killed in the operation.
Yeah, it seems a little bit dangerous, and
Well,
it's like
but-
28 cents an hour.
So they built dozens of these tunnels to drain the system, and then that water comes into
Rock Creek.
and then that's water all of a sudden becomes a resource, and a series of fish hatcheries, fish farms developed in Rock Creek.
Yeah.
And sort of an interesting political debate about who has access to that water, who has the water rights to that runoff water.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and it's still a part of the system. Now, we don't have the seepage problem. They sort of solve that. Now, again, these tunnels...
Do tunnels
now-
still
now-
operate?
well, they do, but we don't have the problem for reasons I'll explain in a second. But let me say that, so they would drill down from the surface into the tunnel to let the water leak, and then drill down in the tunnel into the aquifer.
So even deeper?
Right, and so they're just trying to drain the water off the system, but but the water comes running out, and so that works. But over time, and in the 1960s and 70s, a couple of things happened. In 1962, they took the water out of the canals. They had year-round water. Water from the canal system provided the communities of Buell, Filer, Kimberly, so it was year-round water. They instituted a system, and I should say that during the winters, the Canal Company had to go out and use dynamite, and they were constantly in a struggle to remove the ice from the canals.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
Like now, they cut the water off in October, and so the canals are empty.
Okay.
And then in the 1970s and 80s, they went from flood irrigation to sprinkler irrigation. For a variety of reasons, the water table has dropped. The aquifers drop, largely because of the developments east of us, where they've been pumping water out of the aquifer.
Okay.
Because of the development of farming between Twin Falls and Idaho Falls, if you will.
Yeah, so the water table is dropping
Right,
down.
and so we don't have seepage. We don't have the water table coming to the surface.
Yeah, because we already
Now,
drained it a lot.
Well, but still in the summer, when they put the water out, the water table comes up.
Oh, okay.
But so that seepage problem was solved by in the short term by the tunnels, in the long term by, I think, overuse. Now, those tunnels today are an interesting part of the history, and they still do have a function in some of the fish hatcheries, but some of them have blocked off the Canal Company doesn't really want people going to the canal system in any form.
No, it's very dangerous to try. I've seen one of those tunnels, and yeah, it's cool to see, but yeah, I would not want to go in there. Like, no thanks. Yeah, but it's very interesting that that was the solution, that how they were going to drain the system. It's like, we'll drill a hole, into the canyon, and then we'll drill holes into it, so that way it seeps into it, and then it flushes it out.
Well, it was a interesting engineering. Now, keep in mind that I think, not that I'm a mining historian, but in mining history, that the mine filling up with water is always a sort of a problem. So this is, engineers trying to figure out how to drain that system was
get the water back in the Snake River. Yeah.
Well, and then as it developed along the road there, Arnell, as you know, then the water going back into the Snake River off the system became a problem, because with the water went soil, and then in the 1960s, the environmental movement, in 1972, the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Water Act said that within 10 years, all of the water off of the Twin Falls system going into the river had to be swimming pool quality. So the environmental movement in the EPA, that's a new game. We might say Twin Falls history, before Twin Falls, after Twin Falls, until the 1970s. In fact, that's the way that I would see it, because in the 1970s, the Canal Company had serious problems. I write about it in the book.
Oh, then this is your book right here, right?
This
one right here?
Well, this book was written by Howard Moon in its origins, and then I edited it and added to it he wrote from the Canal Company to 1920, and I wrote from 1920 to the present.
Oh, so it was like a kind of like a collaboration of both of you guys kind of working on the book.
So he did the study of the Canal Company as a part of an environmental impact statement. I took the study and Preservation Twin Falls, took that manuscript, and we turned it into what we'd call a popular history, public history. This is one of the labor camps, but the chapter in here is about in the 1970s, the problems the Canal Company had because of...
So these were the people that did the tunnels, huh?
No, those were the people that built the canals in the first place.
Oh, these were the people that built the canals in the first place. Yeah, this is probably some good photos in here, because again, it's like I like looking at these photos and just kind of seeing like, and here's the photo of the Rock Creek station. I'm very familiar with this one because this building right here, I believe, is still there.
Yeah. This
one right here. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I recreated this photo where I'm like standing here, and then it's like shows you kind of like an example of how it was and so forth. And this is like a old photo of Blue Lakes Country Club, and then their stuff. And is this where I.B. Prehistory used to live at then, or?
Well, yeah, there was actually a hotel down there.
Yeah, it says Prehistory Home. Yeah, so it's like right.
Yeah, it had a house down there, and then what is called
and then
Blue Lakes Hotel down there.
Blue Lakes Hotel. Is I.B. Prehistory a hotel? I mean, a house still down there or not?
No.
It got torn down?
His grave is down there.
His grave is down there, but his house is not there. This is such a good house.
No, there's one little building there that he built for his daughter that's right there if you play golf on the 17th hole.
Around 17th hole,
huh? Little tiny, what you'd call a tiny house there.
Tiny house at the 17th hole. So anybody playing golf, a tiny house at 17th hole, check it out.
All the Blue Lakes folks know about that place quite well. But.
And then this is the bridge that used to cross from one section to the other section.
That Mr. Prehistory had an orchard.
Everybody had an orchard here, like apples or something.
But no, over in the Canyon Springs side. I mean, he farmed both sides of the river there.
Oh, he did both sides, so he had land access to both sides, and he farmed both. Kind of where the other golf course is, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are remnants of this orchard still on the golf course today.
Oh,
sure.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting. And
but Arnell, let me then just skip ahead towards the end there. So in the 70s, the problem was canal breaks. They had
canal breaks.
The canal, the burrowing animals. they would run the canals to maximum amount.
Oh, so the animals mess up the canal.
And you'd have breaks. And so this is where Rock Creek comes into connection, because when a canal would break, then they could dump the water down Rock Creek. Well, to dump the water down Rock Creek, and they have a place out on the canal system called Spill Point, up towards the beginning of the canal, and they have a place where if there's a canal break, they can open Spill Point and dump the water into the Snake River Canyon so that it doesn't come on down and flood things. But it flooded things, lots of things, and in Rock Creek, well, in the 1970s, flooding Rock Creek is a lot different from flooding Rock Creek in the 1920s.
Oh, okay.
And so that became a huge legal problem. Now, if you study Rock Creek, which I know you have with your sister and being part of the community there, in the Canal Company, and Rock Creek is not part of the Twin Falls Canal Company system. Other coulees and things they incorporated into, they built ditches, they used the existing system, if you will, the Mother Nature system, but not Rock Creek because it's too far down, other than the tunnels that we talked about.
Yeah, the tunnels. Everybody loves tunnels.
But where they did have to intersect with Rock Creek is where they crossed Rock Creek, which is one of the most important places, the siphon.
Yeah, there's a tube, basically. I've never seen this tube. I need to go see this tube. Yeah. So there's a tube that basically goes, takes the canal water, right? And then it goes through this tube, and then it jets down and up or something? I am so confused how that even functions.
If you were an old farm boy, it would be easy. So they use siphon tubes, and this is a siphon upside down that takes all of the canal water from one side, runs it through a big tube, goes all the way down, and then up the other side. It's a very impressive sight to see all of that canal water
going through that,
gushing out of the other side of the tube.
So worst case scenario is like if it starts flooding, they can just like siphon it right there, right? Is it right there or is it somewhere else?
No. Well, they have a problem. If there's a canal break, then they've got a serious problem because there's a lot of water and it destroys land and property. And this is to the point. When the canal system was built, it was agriculture with these few little tiny communities, Twin Falls being the most significant of those. But now, Twin Falls is considered an urban county because we have a city that's bigger than 20,000.
Yeah, we're at like 50 or something now, 50 something.
The canal system runs right through a series of urban areas. It's not primarily an agricultural community. Now these are agricultural communities, but now Twin Falls is something quite different. And look, the Twin Falls canal system runs right through town, right?
Yeah.
So this is the canal system and sort of modern Twin Falls. And I'm thinking that's sort of this new phase because Twin Falls is, with the college and it's into and almost a city as opposed to a town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, somebody also told me about Twin Falls has like the first serial killer that's a woman or something like that. What do you know about that?
Well, Lady Bluebeard.
There it is, Lady Bluebeard. Somebody told me, like on one of the podcasts, is like there was a serial killer that like she's like the first lady that killed men or something like that. And what do you know about that?
There'd be a lot of women that killed men before her, but she's a sort of a legendary character, and I don't have the story. Would have to rehearse that a bit. In the Idaho State prison, she served time in prison, but she had a husband and killed one and had another one, and they sort of came up dead. And
you just kept killing them, huh?
And so let's see, Light, I'm ashamed to say I forget the name, but she became known as Lady Bluebeard, who was notorious for her murdering of her husbands there and served time in the women's prison over at the state.
State penitentiary over there. I've been over there too. It's really cool.
Yeah. But don't hold me for that story. I know the story and I don't know the details.
Not the details. To
put it out in public here?
Yeah, exactly. What about okay? Talk to me a little bit more about Shoshone Falls and the hotel. All right, so we understand that the railroad comes in, and then they are taking stage, like those like horse-drawn things.
Sure.
They go through Blue Lakes probably, and then pop out, and then they probably head towards Shoshone Falls or something like that, right?
Well, so a couple things about that. It remained a possible tourist attraction even after that early period. But so right, people go into the Shoshone Falls and then to the hotel there, and we have some pretty spectacular pictures of people down there at that hotel on special events. And now, an interesting story from my environmental history days. You know the story of Hetch Hetchy Dam, which was a debate Yosemite. Do we want to build a dam in order to water San Francisco? And the famous environmentalists of the period, John Muir, Teddy Roosevelt, discussed that. And Muir, we want to preserve this unique place.
Yeah.
And so this kind of interesting development. So in the late 19th century, the development of national parks and people coming to the Grand Canyon of the North, the Niagara of the West, a unique natural feature. And so for a very brief period, when the debate about building the canal system, Mr. Prehistory had the vision, build the dam there at Milner. He used to run vegetables all the way to Albion to the normal school there.
Okay.
And that's sort of where he kind of discovered maybe this was the site where they could do the diversion. But let's see, would it be for a diversion dam, an irrigation, or what would that do to the Niagara of the West?
Yeah, because they have control of
What would it do to this natural wonder and the tourism? So should it be preserved as like a park? Mm-hmm. Now that was a whisper in the wind, and the agriculturalists, of course, won that day, and reclamation carried that day. Now there's another interesting tension right then, and so electricity.
Yeah.
So farmers are going to take the water and put it over the land. Now, immediately utilities, where they're going to take the water and make hydroelectric, that turns into a fundamental conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Now, the first dam that was built, the first power that was produced, is the power plant still down there at Shoshone Falls.
I mean, there is a power plant. So at night or something like that, they divert water through some kind of funnel, and it
First power in Twin Falls, was a power generator in the basement of the Prehistory Hotel, but the first power generated an Idaho Power facility that still operates there.
The one just above it, basically.
Right.
That's kind of where we.
So interestingly enough, the canal system, the irrigation, the agriculture, and the utilities were in a fundamental conflict as well. Now that ultimately played out in the end, to jump a bunch of important history, the Swan Falls Agreement, where farmers and utilities had to make a deal, and they're always sort of making a deal. Originally, the Canal Company wanting nothing to do with power, but today I think they have, I want to say 9, but at least one, their first one on your way there to Strycker Ranch, you see the Twin Falls Canal Company power plant. So they actually put power plants on the canal system, whereas in the early days
they were like, we don't want to deal with that.
That's an anathema.
Yeah, like we don't want to deal with that. So they're just using the water already, and they're like, well, we're already using it. Might as well try to like.
Well, yeah, that's a unique little spot there. They call that the drop. If you look up there where the canal is, and then where the power plant is, there's a serious drop.
Yeah.
And they just took that water and dropped it through a tube
that runs the.
That's pretty poor scientific.
And which spot are you talking about there?
Just when you cross the canal there, on your way to Rock Creek Station, on your way to Strycker, you cross the Twin Falls Canal there.
Oh, I've never seen that. All right.
Yeah. You're on your way from Hanson up to Rock Creek Crossing, and right there where you cross, you look there to the right, below you'll see the power plant there.
You gotta show me that. I don't know exactly. I've never seen that. I don't know. It's like
you better check it out. I could be making this up.
Yeah. You could be. I'm like,
I think there's a picture of it in the book. I'm
Oh,
sure.
really?
No, in my book.
oh, in
but-
your in the
but
book right here. Okay.
You'd have to trust me on that
All
one.
right, I'll trust you. So I've seen this building, the Twin Falls Canal Company, 1909.
Oh, yeah.
It's still there. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
But does anybody actually work there, or is this just kind of like now, just a?
Yes, it's an office, and of course the Canal Company built a new office building down in the warehouse district, which, interestingly enough, Arnell, that was their original yard. And so they had property down there because they had horses. I mean, in early Twin Falls Canal Company, the people that went out and ditch riders rode horses to check on the canal to make sure people weren't stealing water, to make sure people were getting their water. Eventually, they went from horses to pickup trucks.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
in the early days, they had like a stockyard down there where they kept their animals, where they kept their equipment. Now, they still have their equipment down there, but they built a new office. If
Okay.
you know where their Twin Falls Canal Company offices are. If you don't, you should go. They have a spectacular little museum there.
Yeah, no, I've never seen that. You're just giving me new information. I'm like, I haven't been there. You know.
Yeah, it's a new office building in the warehouse district, and I'm trying to think of the street right there. It must be Minidoka, I guess. There, is it right on the curve? Yeah.
Gotcha. So, and then here's another interesting thing that I always find interesting. It's like Twin Falls was named after the two falls at Idaho, not the Shoshone Falls, right? Like not Shoshone Falls. Right above it, there used to be two falls there, right? So,
Sure.
So they turned one off. Like, how did this happen? Like, they're just like, well,
They dammed the one off there.
They
I guess.
dammed one off?
Sure. Well, so let's see, Magic City, Magic Valley, Twin Falls. To be honest with you, I'm from the Mini-Cassia area, and as a youngster, I always thought the Twin Falls there are two falls. That is,
Yeah.
Twin Falls and Shoshone Falls. So Twin Falls.
oh,
And
so you thought of it like that, huh? Twin Falls, Shoshone Falls, and
yeah, there's
the
two
Twin Falls.
falls.
Yeah.
In fact, you hear lots of people refer to Twin Falls, and I often do.
I never thought
as
about
two
it until
falls.
you just said it
No,
like that.
I saw a license plate the other day, two falls.
Two falls.
Right, so there's two falls, but the Twin Falls is the Twin Falls, and then the Shoshone Falls.
Yeah, everybody comes to Twin Falls, and then they go to Shoshone Falls, and they're like, are these the Twin Falls? Because usually it's just like, is that one fall and then this is another fall? But it was meant to be the one above it, was called Twin Falls, and then they dammed one, and then now it's only a single falls. Maybe
Now we call it Idaho Power Falls.
Is it called Idaho Power Falls?
Idaho
I think it's still called Twin Falls.
Well, it is, but I mean Idaho Power. I say that maybe facetiously because Idaho Power operates that facility there.
Yeah, because
that park and that dam there.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody from Idaho Power. They're gonna give me potentially a tour of all of these different areas. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to go there to see exactly all of this stuff in action. You know what I mean? Because it's like not that many people kind of get into that, seeing exactly how it kind of works or so forth. Now, going back to the Chinese miners, okay, there used to be stairs here, okay? They used to come down the canyon to go into this place where they did the mining. I saw the stairs. I got to show you this video.
Well, there were an old set of stairs that would take you down at the base of Shoshone Falls, but below Hanson Bridge.
Well, no, but right by Hanson Bridge, just past these pillars a little bit. I forgot what the site is called. It's
Springtown, yeah.
Springtown, that's it. I found Springtown. Yeah, it's like a area, and you can kind of see some of the mining stuff that they had there.
And then there are two other major sites between there and Shoshone Falls.
Yeah, one by where's that? There's a lot of crazy rapids over there. What is that called? geez, I'm just like, I've been a million times there. Just these names are just eluding me. It's like
Well, the point is there were three major
three major.
population centers, mining operations, and now again, to put this into context, mining in Idaho, the 1860s, 1870s, and that was a site that the Caucasians were not terribly interested in. It wasn't productive enough. And then maybe, Arnell, I'll just switch over and say a few things about what's more important to me about Twin Falls history than
Sure.
the Oregon Trail or the Canal Company, and that has to do with the people a little bit more, and the diversity of our population and our kind of race relations, the Indian-white relations in the early days, and then mining and the Chinese. And so in Idaho in the 1870s, 1 in 4 people, non-native, were Chinese. I'm going to go give a talk in a couple of weeks
Yeah.
about Polybemus in a famous book called Thousand Pieces of Gold. And Polybemus was brought here to North Idaho as a slave in the gold rush, was owned by a Chinese man, and then famously won her independence. Her husband won her in a card game, Charlie Bemis. So Chinese in Idaho history, in Boise, is a major part of early Boise history. It's a central part of our history here that sort of gets overlooked. And then the hostility towards the Asians with the Chinese Exclusionary Act. Then, as you know,
the Minoka camp.
Well, right, and so just leading to that, because I have my other book here that's more precious in the sense that then in southern Idaho, Japanese came and
There it is. Now we got the third book, so we're getting a whole.
No, those are.
This is one you just you didn't do this book. This is just like a book you got.
No, that's the book I did on Minidoka. This Dr. Gentry book I would like to claim as my own.
Yeah, this is probably you're like I hope. Yeah.
So the point is, the Canal Company book is about this. That's a love story about the accomplishments, and I'm what's called a radical historian of sorts. I not look at the accomplishments, but what's going on at the ground level. In fact, the picture of that, Arnell, that's a work camp, and the name of that work camp is called Dago Camp. And the people that built the railroads, that built the canals, farmers, working class, people of color.
Yeah.
And of course, I mentioned my work in Latin American history. I won't go there now, but I became involved in the Minidoka project because of one of the most important historical sites here in the Magic Valley. That's the Minidoka site.
Yeah. So not many people know even about this place.
That's a historical site that kind of disappeared, but quickly in the early part of Twin Falls history, the early 20th century, lots of Japanese were here. They came here to farm. They built the railroad. There's a pretty significant population over in Nampa and in Pocatello because of that. Those were major rail sites. But wherever there was then irrigated sites, Japanese people came in and farmed. California, Idaho passed laws that Japanese, one, couldn't get citizenship rights, couldn't own land. Nevertheless, there were lots of Japanese folks here in the Magic Valley in southern Idaho before Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And then what happened is, imagine this, within 2 years, the 7th largest city in Idaho is a concentration camp just a few miles outside of town here.
Yeah, I went over there on one of their grand opening because they put a new site on there, and there was a lady that was a child. I don't remember exactly how old she was there, but she was giving us a tour of it. It blew my mind. I was like, you used to live here? Ah, man, I couldn't believe it. It was like seeing first-hand experiences. Like, this is where we lived at. I was like, what?
I had the same experience, Arnell, and so my mentor, Dr. Bob Sims, was the expert in the world on Minidoka. He introduced me to the subject. We hosted a conference here at CSI for a decade, and I met people that were born at the camp or that lived at the camp during their childhood or were at the camp in their 20s and 30s and had children there. And I walked around that camp with them, and they're explaining their experiences. Now, what happened is when the war ended and the camp closed, that story left, and the site disappeared, and the Japanese never told the story, and American historians
It's
never
kind of like
told the story.
it's like we're just like eliminating this piece of history like from existence.
10,000 people, the seventh largest city in Idaho, and the history disappears. Now, in the 1960s and 70s, the civil rights movement, the children of the camp, and the title of that book is Surviving Minidoka. That's people that had that experience and then went on after that and became extraordinarily successful. But they never forgot that experience. And that experience shaped their lives. And Japanese Americans have an experience that no other Americans really have. And so that's a part of Magic Valley history, a part of Twin Falls history that's important to me, because we are a diverse community, and our relations with Chinese, our relations with Japanese, our relations with Basque. Did you know there were four Basque boarding houses here in Twin Falls?
No.
One of the major sheep producing regions of the United States. Basque sheep herders were an important part of our community, and the Hoshone and other communities were called sundown towns. That's when the sundown, you better be out of town. And Bascos
Sundown
were
towns.
They're called Black Bascos. And so the racism towards the Basque people, think how we celebrate them now. And even maybe we celebrate Japanese American accomplishments. But in our community now, Arnell, and while Twin Falls is different now, it's not an ag community, it's a college community. And we're one of two places in Idaho that have a refugee center. And we're one of the places in Idaho that has an extraordinary...
That's how I got here, is through that.
I know that.
That's how it's like, most people are like, how did you get here?
And Arnell, and you've watched, you've grown up looking at the hostility in our community towards, look, you're okay, but your sister is one of the brilliant people of our community. And your mother's delightful and terrific. So you guys are extraordinary.
I feel like I should be like an example. Like, this is when you it's almost like this is what happens when you import people. It's like you can get people like that are smart and intelligent and try to help the community. Like, I'm always trying to do some stuff for the community to help everybody.
Well,
and it's like people think like they took our jobs or something like that. It's like look, there's so many jobs right now. Nobody wants these jobs. It's like
well, and I don't think the refugee situation is one aspect, but then we have the anti-immigrant, generally the anti-Hispanic. So the fastest growing population in our community is the Hispanic community. It's fundamental to our culture, to our economy. And so I tell people all the time I worry about my Hispanic friends in this sort of hostile culture, and that's an ambivalence. I mean, a love-hate relationship, and that's part of Twin Falls' story. And it's not one that I should be talking about.
People are like, hey,
but I do. I do.
You're like, I do. I really got to go check out this dam opening when that happens. When does it happen so I can make a note? I'm going to remember this video.
Now, Arnell, that happens depending on the water. But
depending on the water.
Mid-March.
So mid-March.
March 15th, yeah.
Around March 15th.
They'll announce the day when they're going to open the dam, depending on... if the farmers need water. If it's dry and they're ready to start putting water.
They're like, hey, give us some water itself. Now, this tube I've seen, this is at Milner's.
No, that's the siphon.
That's the siphon at Rock Creek?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought this was the one at by Milner Dam, because there's one right there too that goes back into the Snake River or something like that itself. But yeah, so I would definitely say like these books, like if you want to go ahead and dive way deeper, because like we barely scratched the surface here, I feel like, you know what I mean? there's way much more knowledge in these books.
We call that a survey of Twin Falls history.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. How would you recommend people read these books? Like start off with Jim's book first, your book second, or it doesn't really matter? It's like whatever kind of piques your interest, you would like check this out.
No. My books are picture books. And
Yeah, I really like picture books. It's so easy to just look
I
at.
would not recommend my books. Now, the Surviving Minidoka book is an award-winning book.
That's one.
And it's an anthology, articles written by some very distinguished scholars. I made some contributions. My main contribution there was...
How many miles is this away from us? Like 20 miles away or something like that?
Oh, it's not quite that far. It's a few miles from Eden, Idaho, if you know where that is.
Yeah, this is literally in your backyard right here. And you can just read this book. It's probably very informative.
And you can go out and
you can walk around the site. It's open. There's like a very nice museum there too.
But to understand Twin Falls history, Dr. Gentry's book is the Bible. It's the definitive, full of details, and I would recommend a book. My favorite on the irrigation project is by a guy named Mark Fiji, and the book is called Irrigated Eden. And he talks about how this environment and what was going on before irrigation, and then how once you put irrigation over the system, then something happens, like things start growing that didn't grow before.
Yeah. You're like, what's this? How did this happen?
So what it does is to change the environment, and sort of to end that a little bit. I'm reading a book right now called Uprooted about agriculture and how it's changed over the 20th century, and how small communities that used to be this way in terms of ag, and then they become dominated by agribusiness. And so I think about Twin Falls in the sense of going through this period of transition, and growth and environmental quality, and we got water issues, not enough water, but also water quality, and that's going to be part of our future. And so
yeah.
But
yeah. Now, and then the last other thing that I wanted to do like a plug-in was we also have like this app that gives you kind of like a tour of the city park itself. Is that
the one you did with me?
Yep, that's the one. It's so we have an app. Yeah, so you're in it as well. So basically, people can download the Visit Southern Idaho app, and then that shows you all of the cool spots to kind of go see around Southern Idaho. Like, oh, check this out. Go here. Go. It gives you easy directions to them, but it also has a little bit about because we're trying to do it like section by section, because it's divided into different sections. Is my understanding from what Sam was saying. It's like you got this park. Then you got the warehouse, and then you got the residential, and then the downtown, right?
Right. Well, so I'd say the warehouse, the business district.
The business, okay.
And then the business district and the park kind of melds into the residential district. There's really 4 historic districts: the warehouse, the business, the park, the residential.
Gotcha. And I
also
also
the original town site, yeah.
What I also found interesting is when you were talking about like the park and like all of the buildings around it. It's like this is a church here, church there. You were basically kind of saying that it's like was all like church oriented. Can you like talk about that part of the history a little bit?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't let me broaden there. I don't mean that. It's when Twin Falls was developed, you want to have civilization. And so it's a wild, undeveloped spot. And so the town site granted each church a lot, and civilization and church goes together. And then the park, but more importantly, Arnell, is that Twin Falls is developed in the late 19th century, early 20th century, during a time in history we call the City Beautiful movement. It's part of the progressive movement. We're going to plan. Western cities grow haphazardly without plan.
Yeah.
So Twin Falls has developed a city park, churches, sort of a planned community, if you will, as a part of the City Beautiful to make cities more inhabitable. And we see that with the park and the courthouse, and so each church had the church has got site, to me, Western communities, civilization, a golf course, and churches.
Yeah. And what else do you need? You got golf course, churches. They're like, bring them in now. You know.
Well, and I don't need to belittle that because Dr. Gentry just published a church on the Baptists here, the Presbyterian Church, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church. Those churches are a really important part of the community because when people come here having community, the
Communities primarily was very important.
You know, so we could go, not to discriminate, leave the LDS church. The LDS church was there where the mortuary was that's now gone, where the new building is going in. Lots of LDS churches, but that's an interesting part of the Twin Falls story. The Mormon diaspora, as LDS people moved from Utah into Idaho, oldest Idaho community, Franklin, Idaho, in eastern Idaho. But Idaho developed an anti-LDS attitude and laws, and LDS people were outlawed, could not vote. And so there's an
they were like, they were not wanting...
anti-Mormon laws in early Idaho history, and the line was between Albion and Oakley, and Twin Falls is sort of
kind of like
on the secular side, or the anti-Mormon side, if you will, historically. Of course, now we have a
it's like
temple and the whole business. But so the idea is for community and for civilization. I mean, churches are a piece of that.
Yeah. So we got more information in the app.
I got to take just the chance there, because you were doing the shameless self-promotion there. But
what do you got going on?
Well, let me tell you, we should do something with that app for Minidoka someday, but we have other things going on that are outside of Twin Falls history, but part of preservation out at the barn, the Mountain View Barn. You've been there before. Last week we had one of the most distinguished historians in Idaho history, Ron Hatzenbuehler, speak about Thomas Jefferson. He's written 2 books about Jefferson, spent 25 years. And our theme for the History at the Barn lecture series is presidential history. Seems kind of boring. And my purpose for coming to that is it's like I see all these presidential historians and people think they're the cat's meow. Now, I'm not a presidential historian, but we're trying to offer public history to people that might be interested in things. And so we thought, given the centrality of the presidency in our world these days, to look at the history. And so we did Jefferson on December 9th at the barn. You can come out at 6 o'clock and have dinner.
December 9th.
Mountain View Barn, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, and the Expansion of America. That's my title. I'll be giving a lecture on Jacksonian America. Later, we're going to have a lecture on Lincoln. Later, we'll have a lecture on the Roosevelts. And later, we'll have a lecture on John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. So
you guys got to we're going to be like pop.
One a month, History at the Barn. Stay tuned, but make sure.
How do people get in touch with that or participate in that? There's a Facebook page or something?
It's pretty complicated because we don't really want big crowds.
So
this is your invitation. If you miss the podcast.
you got to get all the way to the end of the podcast to get this info.
We will be having some information on it. We have posters. We'll be putting it on social media. We were a little reluctant to get going because of COVID, but we've done it for 3 or 4 years. We have lots of people that are interested.
People love history.
So we want to, this is our contribution to the community. Dinner at the barn.
Good food.
Pleasant conversation. We'll have a scholar and sort of some readings. I'm reading a tremendous book, 3 books about Andrew Jackson now and the Jacksonian period, and it's a very interesting stuff. And then we have one of the leading intellectuals in the country to come talk about.
That's amazing. You get to pick their brain, ask them questions, and so forth.
Thanks for indulging me on my shameless self-promotion there.
What about the plug-in where they do the walking tours and house, the tours? When do those happen? Usually in a summertime.
Good weather.
Good weather.
Look, at Samra, we did a tour of the business district here with your lovely sister, Dr. Cullum.
Dr. Colum, yeah, I got a sister, and she's a doctor now, but not like a real doctor. She's
She's like me. She's a doctor that can't write prescriptions. But
yeah, exactly.
When I went, got my Ph.D. at University of Washington, they said, go to the graduation ceremony because they treat you like you are the king.
Yeah.
And whereas, and from now on, the medical doctors are always going to be treated better than you. But at the graduation ceremony, the philosophers, the history professors are the top dogs.
Top dogs.
It's downhill from there. But no, I'm
awesome.
very proud of your sister. And so she's with the Preservation Commission doing these tours, making people aware of what's going on. Samara and I have already planned for spring.
Yeah,
and
summertime. She's got like a little box that carries a speaker around and in and out. I'm like, hey, this is bad audio.
I told her to get rid of the box and just talk louder. But
talk loud.
But look, we have a tour because we're doing a project on homes, old homes in Twin Falls, and we're creating some signs. And we're going to do a walking tour of some of these spectacular homes in the original town site. And that's going to be in April, May. I don't know the date. We'll let folks know. And Sam and I are going to do that together. She's the beauty and the brains, and I'm sort of the entertainment guy.
Yeah, like if you bring the entertainment.
Well, we have a good duet going there, and it'll be great fun because there's a lot of interesting stories in some of those old houses I've been discovering. I've worked on the project for the summer, and yeah,
there's just so much history here that it's impossible to cover. We'll have to kind of, I'm gonna have to keep getting. Maybe I should see if I can get Jim on here as well, see what he's got to say. You know what I mean? Because he's got. We need this information in audio and video format too, so that way I can kind of talk to him. And then even talking to somebody from like somebody that lived at there, that would just blow my mind if I had somebody like that come on as well too. That would be crazy.
Well, I can hook you up there, and then I do recommend that you get Dr. Gentry, not just in terms of that book, but he wrote the history of College of Southern Idaho, just published.
Oh yeah, so he did 2 books, or did he? How many books does he have?
Well, and then he also has a new book on the Baptist Church, and then he's working on a book that's be forthcoming on the canal tunnels, and so he's prolific. He's the kind of historian I want to be. He's a real historian.
He's a real.
I'm sort of like fluff historian.
Yeah, you get a little bit of here, a little there. That's awesome. Is there anything else you think we should talk about? Like, did we kind of cover a lot of stuff here? This is a lot of stuff to digest for somebody. I feel like there's just so much.
So Arnell, let me just conclude and say, so the lessons.
Okay.
So we study history, we learn from history, so we don't.
You don't want to repeat that
those
questions.
Errors, but so what's Twin Falls now? A changing community going through this growth. We see it kind of a historical analysis, and we're going to change. And what do we want to save? What do we want to preserve? We're going through a time of development, and that's a struggle for saving history, preserving history. Which your sister and I are passionate about. Yeah, and
somebody's got to do it.
And the community's passionate about growing and developing and business, and so there's a tension there, and so we want to educate the community and develop a sort of historical consciousness, a preservation mentality. We can have both, and my argument is this: historical preservation. History is good business.
Yeah.
And so to attract people to a community that has that tradition, I think that's a quality of life issue. We don't want to forget our past, not that we're going to repeat it, but it has great value. There are great lessons, and there are connections that are important for the human condition. To tear down the past and just live in the present is a disservice and a dysfunction.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know I'm preaching to the converted. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on here. I think we got some good clips here. We got a lot of good info. I feel like I'm more educated on Twin Falls history, and you just kind of give me a little bit more nuggets and so forth. So I'll put this on YouTube, and then I like this idea of just trying to talk to as many people, so that way I can kind of get pick their brain and kind of see see where it kind of goes. But again,
you got a good gig there.
Yeah, I know. Well, thanks for coming on, and that's it for today's podcast.
Thank you.
All right, we got it.